Hey everyone, this is Omercan and welcome to another episode of SideQuest here at PolyCosm. We have a two-parter this time, starting out with creating a concept for a flying insect-like creature. I'm going to talk about how I started out by studying insect references before applying what I've learned with some quick thumbnail sketches. Then, I will develop one of these to a finished concept sketch for Christina. In part 2, she'll sculpt my concept, then show you all how to create a swarm of these creatures. Alright, let's get started with part 1. Before sketching some ideas, I wanted to learn more about flying insects such as mosquitoes and crane flies. With stuff like this, it's easy to think that you know enough and start sketching right away, but it's always to your benefit to take the time to observe and study. In my case, I was really fascinated by the variety of proportions and body types you can find among these insects. My studying method here starts with a quick sketch to capture the gesture and the proportions. I hint at the main shapes by simplifying them down as much as I can, and then start to work with secondary shapes only after I have the overall sketch established. I'm not zooming in and dealing with super small details in this case, but mostly noting down how the shapes break down, how their legs have this change from thick to thin shapes, and I'm looking at the repeating parts in their shells, things like that. I talk more about how I study from photo reference in an old video of ours, so make sure to check that one out as well. Up close, you realize how hairy these guys are. It made me think of how Jeff Goldblum's character in The Fly starts to grow these thick hairs all over his body. If you haven't seen that movie, I highly recommend it. It's a great body horror experience. Anyway, after a few studies, I'm ready to apply what I learned with some rough thumbnails. I'm going to let a couple of other studies I made play out here in Timelapse without any commentary. If you wanted to see more of my studying process, feel free to keep watching. Otherwise, you can click on the timestamp for the next part to skip right ahead. Here we go. Time for some big, bold, and messy sketches. I'm not going to be spending too much time on any single one of these. I'm staying zoomed out, working with some big, broad strokes at first. You'll notice that my ideas start pretty tame and slowly get pushed towards more monstrous, more imaginative concepts. This tends to be the case most of the time for me. It will take a few sketches for my brain to warm up and I get my head around it, and then I'll start pushing the shape language towards more and more exaggerated ideas. The important thing to remember is to try and make each sketch significantly different than the previous one. Each one should be a fairly unique silhouette. I'm changing the body posture, proportions, and the shape language as much as I can to differentiate them. After discussing these with Christina as well, I took one of these sketches and tweaked it around a little to get our winning concept. I'm going to increase the scale on this one a bit, then refine the sketch further to clarify the implied ideas in there. I like taking my time at this stage and coming up with answers to all the questions that might arise later on. The more defined things look, the easier it will be for Christina to sculpt this. Once again, I'm going to let this section play out in time-lapse without any commentary. You can keep watching to see how I further refine the sketch. Otherwise, click on the timestamp for the next part. I go over this rough sketch with a clear Lineart layer to finalize the design and get into some more details when it comes to implying textures and different surface materials. There are a lot of overlapping shapes here, so I'm going to pay close attention to my line weight to create a sense of depth. Shapes that are closer to us will be outlined with a thicker line to help with that. For parts that are further back in the distance, I'm using a lighter line. I think you all know the drill now. Stick around for the time lapse or click on the timestamp. I move on to sketching a quick side view and front view as well to help with the sculpting process. If you have been watching our videos for some time, I'm sure you've noticed that I do this a lot. If you are interested in working as a concept artist, being able to draw turnarounds is a huge plus. Of course, this is not every concept artist's job, but it is a very useful skill to have, and it has an important place within the production pipeline. I'm kinda short on time here, so I'll be leaving these sides and front views as just rough sketches. I did ask Christina if they were clear enough, and she was fine with it. Although, if you are working on a portfolio piece or something like that, I'd suggest taking these to a clear finish so you can have a clear turnaround sheet that looks professional. I always struggle at, looking professional. Afterwards, I've added a quick color pass below my final Lineart, and here's the final concept sheet for this little guy. Moving forward, this will provide Christina with enough information to work with. Like I mentioned at the beginning, in the next part, you can watch her process for sculpting this insect, which she'll then animate using shape keys and move on to creating a swarm by using Blender's particle system. Thinking about this is making me feel all kinda itchy. I feel like there's an actual fly somewhere in the room and it keeps landing on me. And that brings us to the end of part 1. We'll be back next week with part 2. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to drop them in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, and take care everyone.